Welcome, everyone, to a beautiful conversation with Michelle Ifill and me on healing the divides between women of color and white women. Please hop in the chat, tell us where you're joining us from, and your name and how you are doing today. Michelle, it's so great. I'm so grateful to be with you here today. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation.
It's an important conversation, and before we even start, if you don't mind, I'd let's just like to take a minute for us to maybe less than a minute to just get a bit grounded before we start our conversation because so often we're running from one Zoom to the next, one meeting to the next as women without an opportunity to just breathe. So that's what we're going to do for a second, all right? For just a bit. You
That
can
sounds
just follow
wonderful.
me. And I'm going to count. We're going to breathe in at 6, hold for 6, and then out for 6. So breathe in our nostrils in, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then out our mouths 6. Beautiful. In again, hold it, release. Just one more. In, hold, slowly out our mouths. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm glad, Karen, that you actually made the sound.
Mhm.
Very, very important. Why do I do this? Because we just run, run, run. And having the opportunity to just sit quiet and take in the oxygen helps. Helps our mind, helps our heart, helps our spirit. So thank you for giving me that time.
Thank you for getting my nervous system to calm down and feel fully present. And I see from our listeners, I appreciate the opportunity to acknowledge the breath.
Beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
So we're here to have a conversation that you and I talked about having maybe 18 months ago. And I sort of met you through LinkedIn and some of the amazing comments that you had shared about your journey. And I'm just really, really happy to spend this time together and sharing it with other women to talk about a subject that is even more pertinent today than it was a year ago when we talked about getting together.
Yes, 100%. And I am so delighted to see that Cynthia Overton is here, who's a wonderful scholar leading so much growth in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how do we prepare underrepresented folks for successful careers in tech? Portia Chen Silverberg, who's an amazing woman from the Bay Area, now living in Western Colorado, who's been at this work throughout her career, and Michelle Simmons from Los Angeles. So we have from coast to coast women who have dedicated their lives to healing racial divides and building opportunity for women, as have you, Michelle. And that is why I'm so grateful to be in conversation with you and would just love to hear about your journey and why you have been a lifelong advocate for the advancement of women.
Okay, well, I can start that. Happy to do so. Why focus on women? Because we have been in a space I have been in, I'll speak about myself. I've been in a space for my entire career where, in fact, it was very, very important to make sure that women had a voice. And so, how I came about wanting to really focus on how it is that I can be of support was really in my early days. I would say even starting in high school, frankly. Always the one who, wanted to raise my hand to bring the girls together, to have conversations about how we can make sure that our voices are heard, whether it's in student government, whether it was in having to do with sports. And so that was something that I really started quite young. And then when I got into the working world, I realized that there was just too much of an imbalance as far as the power that women were sort of expected to have, and that I found incredibly troubling. And so I really made it my mission to be the one that was encouraging not just myself, but encouraging my peers and those who were my people who worked under me to use their voice to make sure that the needs that were necessary for women were being thought of, and so really that's really how I started. I started quite young.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because I started quite young too in elementary school when conservative parents tried to ban Judy Blume books out of my public school library. I organized my classmates and led a successful petition drive to the school board, and lo and behold, we won. And so I think that that early victory taught
Hmm.
me that raising your voice is important
Hmm.
and you can actually get things done.
I mean, interesting. You're saying Judy Blume. I was an avid reader of Judy Blume, and I think that that underscores a point that I believe we should delve into a little bit, about how important it is, we as women who, whether we have nieces, whether nephews too, but I'm going to speak to the girls right at this moment, whether we have nieces, whether we have our own daughters, that they watch everything that we do,
Mm.
even when we don't realize the way in which that we are influencing their vision of what it is to be a woman. And I also often think that we don't pay enough attention to recognizing that the shadow of the mom, the shadow of the auntie, the shadow of the grandma means a lot. And that's one of the takeaways that I think it's important to share. I mean, my mother, Beverly White Eiffel, fabulous, amazing woman living in Hilton Head, South Carolina, with my dad. Um, for whatever reason, when I was probably about, well, I said for whatever reason, lying. When I was 8 or 9, my mom would always say, "Michelle, you have an answer for everything. You need to be a lawyer." That's what I heard from 8 or 9 years old. What ended up happening? Ah, shocking. Ended up retiring as general counsel when I'm 5 years ago. So m- pay attention to the things that we say to our daughters and sons, but I'm speaking of daughters. Pay attention to the things we say, pay attention to the things we encourage, pay attention to things that we value or that they see that we value, because that can make such a difference in the way in which they um, mature into successful and engaged adults.
I appreciate that so much. My therapist just reminded me yesterday, you are your children's first role model
Mhm.
for gender roles, for the way you treat yourself, the boundaries you set, the company you keep, the way you conduct yourself, and it's such a huge responsibility as well as as what you're saying to be encouraging.
Yes. Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
it's especially important in this time, which we were just talking about, perhaps the shittiest Women's History Month
Ever.
ever.
And, and I have to say, before we even go there, I love the fact that you spoke about your therapist. That,
Mm,
ladies, okay, and gents, if they're men on the this right now, of all times, if you were thinking, well, I really would love to talk to someone, but I'm not sure, this is the time. It's heavy out there. I mean, we're going to speak lightly as much as we can, right, Karen? But being realistic too. But I just think there's no more of a stigma of actually getting the help that we need to just live day to day. Not that there are any deep-seated issues. Maybe there are deep-seated issues, but for those of you who just want some support in dealing with the day-to-day of what's in front of us right now, please get it. Please make that call. It's so, so important. And Karen, after once we're finished with this LinkedIn Live, we will be able to share resources to the
correct.
group that's on. So let's make sure that we do that, because I have some great resources with regard to mental health support, and we need to share it amongst ourselves. That's what the sisterhood's about, correct?
100%. Yes. And especially culturally competent therapy that really serves people well, because especially in this time where our identities are under attack, where our culture and our families, we need to make sure that the help we receive is competent to discuss all of those things.
Very good point. I absolutely agree with you. So here's a question for you.
Hmm.
How is it that you are who you are? All right, I mean, we've had a little bit of conversation about it, but I you're one in like a million. And so how is it that you, like, why are we here having this conversation led
Mm.
by you as the founder of the interracial sisterhood community? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, again, it's very much, I think, rooted in my childhood. So I was adopted, and my parents never hid the fact that I was adopted. They always talked about it in very positive terms. So I never had the big reveal, oh, you're adopted and therefore you're second class. But I did, from a very early age, have a strong sense of how random life is, and how lucky I was that someone had been willing to carry me to term and then give me to someone else who was also a loving, wonderful family who raised me well, and that was all just by luck. And then I was an includer from the time I was a very young child. I can remember I had multiple stuffed animals and I didn't want any of them to feel left out, so I would put them on my bed, and then I would lay down on top of all of them, and then I would rotate them so that they could each have,
Oh my goodness.
closeness to me.
Mhm.
Like, from a very early age, I wanted everyone, like, my preschool bus, I invited all of the kids to my birthday party. I didn't want any kids to feel left out.
Mm,
And I was the kid who was, with the LGBTQ kids in my very conservative town.
mm,
My childhood best friend was a refugee from the former Soviet Union, the first Jewish person, the first brunette to move to our town. And I was,
mm,
through that friendship with her, which has lasted for decades, I learned how to have a truly strong friendship with another
mm,
woman where you don't get jealous of each other's success and you support each other through thick and thin. And that's had a huge impact on me as well. And then going to Mount Holyoke, where
from
for the
Mount Holyoke, okay.
Yes.
Mhm,
For
mhm,
the first time, I got to be in a group of women who are very international from all parts of the country, all different identities and backgrounds. I was just so blessed to be educated in that environment and to really experience what it is like to have sisterhood.
mhm.
Then thrown out into the workplace where I realized, oh my gosh, like I went from like, I can do
Ah.
anything to
So getting into the corporate environment just sort of changed your whole perspective on what sisterhood really meant.
Yes, yes. Well, and I
Mm.
never worked in corporations.
Okay.
I've worked
Okay.
in nonprofit and government throughout my career.
I see.
And I've always I had an unusual career in the sense that I've always worked for organizations that were predominantly people of the global majority.
Mhm.
And almost all of my supervisors, my leaders that I've reported to have been women of color. So I had to learn how
Okay.
to show up in an organization as a white woman, and working with people from all different identities.
Alright, so that's how you started your career, is
Mhm.
working with a truly diverse community.
Yes, correct.
Alright, so that does give us some perspective on how it is that you are looking at the world today, and you've been doing this for how long have you when did you start the Interracial
I
Sister
started,
Community?
Racy Conversations 10 years ago.
Okay,
So
a
I
whole
started
decade.
doing workplace workshop facilitation because at that point, my career Shay Franco Clausen is here. Oh my gosh, Lynn Crofton. Thank you so many amazing people are in here. Mitch Shepard, so grateful you are all here. Um, I started 10 years ago. So I my prior career was in preparing young adults of color for the workplace,
Okay.
and then just hearing about all their stories of what they were experiencing at work, I realized I need to start preparing the workplace for young adults of color.
Mm,
So that shift happened 10 years ago when I started my workplace workshop facilitation, Racy Conversations company. And then in 2016 was when I decided I really need to start healing the racial divides among women when I saw, too much of the conversation about women in the tech workforce, which is
tech,
it
because 'cause you're
was
out in California.
yes, I'm in
Mhm.
Silicon Valley, San
Okay.
Francisco,
Alright.
and, so much of the conversation was about, how to ace your technical interview, how to, get promoted to manager,
Mhm.
um, uh, but we weren't really talking about how do we advance all women
Women.
in the workplace.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even though this is a very diverse region in a
Mhm.
very diverse state, 9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
if a white woman invited me to something, I'm one there's like maybe 1 or 2 women of color there. If a black woman invited me to something, I'm one of maybe 2 white women who are there. And I'm like,
The segregation was
Yes.
just so apparent, which it continues to be, but I didn't wanna interrupt. But yes,
No.
that's the challenge.
Correct.
Mhm.
And I feel like the relationship
Mhm.
piece is what is
Yes,
really
it's
missing.
missing. It's missing. I mean, it's funny because you're making me think about, my time with Verizon, where I was the lead of starting this organization, or this I wouldn't even call it an organization. It was the sort of the foundation of how we were going to find a way for lawyers of color that are in firms to work with in-house counsel. And so it was called Engage Excellence. And the whole concept behind it was that people give business to people they trust. People give business to people they trust, and the people they trust are the people they know. And then how do you get to know the people that you trust? Well, they're in your community, they're in your synagogue, they're in your church, they're in well, if but they look like you. And so if you don't have the opportunity and make the opportunity, being intentional in sort of opening up that vast community that you can be part of, that's not everyone that looks exactly like you and has been raised like you, then you have more of an opportunity to sort of break that barrier. And that is exactly what why I spent that much time working on that program, because I just really knew that if we could get more lawyers of color in front of those people who were decision makers in house, then it would just open up the coffers more than it had been, let's say, 15 years ago. Similar concept. We actually need to get to know each other, and once we get to know each other, then the misconceptions, the uncomfortableness, the distrust, does fall away. So and that's why we're here.
Yes, and I love that what you said about intentionality. It's not going to happen
No, no,
naturally.
it's
You
not.
have to craft these things because the segregation is by design. It's also rooted in housing discrimination. We spoke about earlier in our prior conversation
Mhm.
about how growing up, I was in an almost entirely white community because it had been a sundown town.
Mm.
And there's still many, many communities like that, even though housing discrimination is illegal and
For
uh,
now.
for now. Yes, exactly. But let's for the next 5 minutes. Um, so by design, because they don't want us to get to know each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. And that to me is why I'll speak for you and me, why you've launched the interracial sisterhood, because the only way that we are going to be able to we, there's no question that right now more than ever, right, white women and women of color have to take be intentional in trying to understand and get to know one another, work with one another, and support one another. We're not going to go down the path of having a lot of political conversation, but I think that when you and I first talked about doing this, the sense of urgency, there, of course, there was, but it was a different. My mindset was different. I'll speak about myself. I was like, yes, this is important because I am a mother, I'm an auntie, and a grandma. And so, therefore, the world that I want for for the progeny is one where we are able to collaborate and know one another and understand one another and have fruitful interactions. That's the way I felt 6 months ago. Now, I mean, my hair is on fire for
Mhm.
Karen. I'm just going to be honest with you, right? And even the concept of having this conversation when I was like thinking about the things I wanted to speak on, um, I had a real knot in my stomach
Mm,
because every day things that are coming out, all it's doing is making it easier for us to be further and further apart. And so I feel that there is an urgency for us to have not only this conversation and you obviously have had many of them. I've been having them my entire career, and will continue. But now I believe that what at least I'm looking for is for everyone listening on this Zoom and anyone else that for you all to have these type of one-on-one, three-on-one, five-on-five conversations in small groups, because what that does is it just opens up the door for more understanding, more compassion, and then frankly more joy, because it's kind of a unjoyous time right now. So we should be doing everything we can to make us feel better about the scenario that is unfolding in front of us. And one of the and Karen, I'll say, I just thought it was so heartwarming when we were speaking. We, had a little bit of a prep call. And I said, well, with all the things going on in your life right now, do you really want to do this Zoom now? Maybe we could push it back. He's like, no, this brings me joy. This makes me feel better about everything going on. So I want to have this conversation. And I really have to say that just touched me so much.
thank you so much, Michelle. And likewise, I say that to you, oh, let's do this conversation. It will bring joy. But I myself have felt so down, which is unlike me. I have always been like on Clifton's Strength Finder, my number one strength is positivity. Okay. I have
Yes, yes.
always been.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everything's gonna be great, super enthusiastic, but the weight of these times and what is happening, seeing immigrants, being snatched up with plainclothes and yeah, it's just a lot.
It's a lot. It's absolutely a lot. So what we want to do, right, is to give our audience who's listening in just some ideas of things that that, because I think everyone wants to, like, what can I do? How can I
Yes.
make things better? How can I make myself feel better? So let's talk a little bit about your retreats that you've had and some learnings that have come from them, because I think that can be helpful. And I'm going to have to put on my glasses to be able to see all the chats coming through.
Yes, there's some
So
beautiful
so
chats
if there's
coming
anything
in.
that we need
That's
Karen for president, love that one. Uh, so if there's any questions that
Michelle.
come up that we want to share, then we need to. I'll need you to do that since if I don't have my glasses on. But yeah, tell me a little bit, Karen, the positive mindset queen. Love it, love it.
Jihei was my intern many, many, many years ago and my lifelong, lifelong friend. Um, I'm sorry, what was the question?
N just like what from the experiences you
Oh,
have
yes.
had with regard to your interracial sisterhood retreats, talk a little bit about what were some of the aha moments that helped you to see the benefit of why having women of color and white women get together to have conversations is so beneficial for the future of the country, frankly.
Correct. Yes. So I would say, um, we need that extended period of time. So we're not rushing. It's one thing to go to a one-off event, right? And exchange business cards and maybe you connect afterwards on LinkedIn or maybe you even have a follow-up Zoom.
Mhm,
Um, but it is quite another thing to spend an entire weekend
mhm,
together and
mhm,
have that liminal time when you go to dinner or have a drink together or go have a one-on-one conversation
mhm,
in the facilitated space where you go really deep
mhm,
and have the time to really connect with each other. And I think that that is what is missing
mhm.
as a mom, as a entrepreneur, as a caregiver. Like I'm constantly rushing from one thing to another.
True, true.
And and we need more of a slow pace
Mhm,
to build relationship.
mhm,
And I think we are all hungry, particularly after the pandemic.
mhm,
Our social skills, I've always been a very social person. My social skills are rusty. When
mhm,
I go to a large event, like I was at this wonderful conference on Monday, but there were hundreds of people there and it was very intimidating to
mhm,
just walk up to a stranger and introduce myself, even though I've done that my whole life, you
mhm,
know? And I
mhm,
think it's because things have gotten rusty. So being in a smaller space with each other,
mhm,
having the opportunity to have these deep conversations and a variety of activities. So not just talking about healing racial divides among women, but also folding origami, also
mhm, mhm,
having a sound bath.
mhm,
Also, just going outside and enjoying the garden
mhm.
is so, so important.
I totally agree with you. What do you think though about the concept of, now there are a lot of conversations going on, as far as what corporations and law firms will be doing with respect to ERGs, employee resource groups. Some companies are saying, we're not doing anything with them. They are a valuable fabric of our organization, and so we're standing behind our ERGs. Others are saying, well, we're not sure what's going to be happening, so we're disbanding. Um, for those companies and those anyone who's on the bridge, as far as what you individually can do in either one of those environments, this is the perfect time to have leadership and engage in, well, if we are quote unquote disbanding or reducing our ERGs, what are some things that I can do in a small way to get a few people together, that don't look the same and don't have the same experiences, and coordinate going out to bowling, or coordinate getting together and having dinner, or m- making sure that you go out to lunch together. I mean, I feel very um I feel that it's really important for right now for us to work doubly hard to get out of our comfort zone of reaching out to someone who you only lightly know that doesn't have the same life experience as you. And we're talking right now specifically about women of color and white women, but that's not really the only conversation, right? It's the conversation about the whole panoply of human condition, and that we all are coming to the world with different perspective, different backgrounds, different capabilities, seen and not seen. And so this, to me, we're at the last few days of International Women's Month, but this is the time where we look to turn the page on April and say, okay, my goal is to figure out ways that I can be an ally to all. And I think we should talk a little bit about specifically allyship between white women and women of color. Tell
Yes.
me your thoughts on like, what does that even mean? I did a LinkedIn post about that, by the way. So anybody listening, find me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's also really important. And then look at my post about allyship, because it's for Trekkie fans and not. Anyway, go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
Yes. I wanted to actually show this comment from Mitch Snyder or
Mm,
Mitch Shepard. I like the idea of learning in relationship with others, but I'm also conscious that Black women and women of color are rightly exhausted and often all the way over at an 8 to 10 on awareness, where us white women may be back at 3, 4, 5 on our awareness. And it can feel frustrating, boring, exhausting for women of color to hear white lady tears or I just cannot believe X is happening. And Black women are like, how is this still surprising you? I do a lot with mixed race women, but I'm always aware of this gap. That's it. We gotta stand
yeah,
in
yeah.
that gap,
Hmm.
and I would say that's also been the experience with the interracial sisterhood retreats, is that it's a very intentionally formed community. Like, you don't just, sign up and come. You have to apply, we do an interview, because we're really seeking, are the women who are planning to come, um right, and prepared for the opportunity that we have, as well as we build community before we get there. We have online conversations before we get there so that we start to build a little bit of recognition of who each other is and what to expect and all of those things. That said, there's still harm has happened at the interracial sisterhood retreat, but the good news is we stay in community. We don't just fracture and all go our separate ways. We process this as a community, and the harm doer takes accountability for what she has done. And in a graceful way, we're not ostracizing anybody or making anybody feel terrible about what they have done, but just we don't have much experience relating across differences equals, as Audre Lorde told us, and that we're going to have to create those patterns ourselves. So let's give an opportunity to create those patterns.
I'm very very well said, and I think that, I mean, Mitch, you're making a very good point, because probably about a year ago, I'm the founder of this organization called the Women's Excellence Network. It's primarily made up of not necessarily attorneys, but people who either have gone to law school, and many are not practicing any longer, but some are. They're partners in law firms. They're in-house counsel. They're general counsels. They're recruiters, so it's a cross section, but with a legal slant. And I remember going broadly and saying that I wanted to host a conversation with black women and white women. It was not generally women of color. I think I was just toying up with the idea, and I just went out to my general community, and it was a time. It was maybe 18 months ago, and there was a time where there were just back to back police shootings of unarmed black men and boys, and the just the pain that had was still, very, very raw, for Black women, and the response was, I really can't have this conversation right now, because the pain was too heavy. And so, Mitch, I appreciate that you're raising the fact that, um, women of color, Black women specifically, also have been, the weight has been heavy for a long time, and there are many who've made the decision that I don't have the bandwidth to coach, to teach, to, make one feel better about the situation. That is now on, that's not my job anymore. That's on the white women to do it. And so we have to be, we have to recognize that that is definitely a sentiment that, that exists within the Black women community and the women of color community. Obviously, it's not everyone, but the thin skinnedness of hearing that type of response, just, there's just no place for thin skin. We all have to actually recognize that this is the reality. And so to be able to push forward and through that is, takes some intestinal fortitude that everyone must have, frankly.
Yes.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
and I think, we also, as white women, have to learn how to show up as true allies, which means taking risks, being in solidarity, showing up at the police commission to demand accountability when police officers kill Black boys, kill Black men. This is very important because we have so much power and influence, white women. We are the largest voting bloc. I think we make up 35% of voters, the largest group in the electorate. Okay. And we have so much privilege in these settings, like police commission meetings, like Board of Education meetings, like city council meetings. And all too often, the white women who are showing up in these settings are showing up to ban books or to prevent integration of schools, et cetera, et cetera. So the good not I don't like using good, bad
Hmm.
binary. So
Hmm.
the white women who
Progressive. Hmm.
yes,
Hmm.
the white women who believe in integration,
Hmm.
the white women who believe in, all kinds of books should be on the shelves, the
Hmm.
white women who believe that, police should be accountable for their actions, we need to show up
Hmm.
too, and we need to disrupting the status quo is risky. You're going to lose things. You're going to lose relationships. You might lose contracts. You might lose opportunities, etc. But that is the price that we're going to have to pay if we want to see change happen. The comfort zone is just protecting the status quo. And right now, we are under attack. All women are under attack.
I think that's an important point, that it's this, the scenario right now is that we're stronger together.
Mm,
um and the idea of, well, if I stay quiet, then I'll be fine. I just don't, I don't subscribe to that any longer. I think that, so many laws are being, turned backwards. The rule of law is under question at this point. um I still, like Karen, I want to remain an optimist, but I also, look at my 24-year-old daughter and know for a fact that she is going to have less rights as being a woman than I did when I was 24. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. So, incrementally, what are the things that we can do individually, to sort of change, not necessarily, yes, obviously I'd love to change that trajectory, but what are the things that individuals can do, in order to, like, show and engage in a way that we feel proud of how we are coming into the world, as women. And one of the conversations that I've been having and thinking about are what are some really concrete ways that white women can actually show allyship, to women of color. I, come from a corporate background, so that's what I have in my mind. But it's more than corporate background. It could be not for profit. It can be, in as you said, Karen, in community, in the PTA. I mean, there anything. The bake sales. I mean, there's so many different ways that women can support, and encourage one another, and yes, it's going out of your comfort zone to do that for someone who you don't really know very well, or doesn't look like you and doesn't have the same experiences as you. But in the grand scheme, it brings forth a more cohesive, collaborative, joyful, world that we really want to leave for our children. And our nieces and nephews, and that's the mindset. So, Karen, when you have conversations about, allyship, does anything like come up in like very often in your mind, as far as the ways in which white women can be more like allies for women of color?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is humility. Part of it is being willing to learn, being open to learning, to not avoiding conflict. I think a lot of white women shy away at the first sign of conflict, and we have this big urge to be liked.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, we
Hmm.
um we want people to like us,
Hmm.
and that is to our detriment. What we should be seeking is to be respected.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
I
think
think I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that many of you listening in probably would have heard of, various ways that one can show, that type of allyship, in the meeting environments, in the corporate environments, in the PTA, in your local synagogue, local, church, any community, engagement. I'll just share a couple, because some people may be on the bridge who really don't know how, like, what can I really do. So I would just want to spend, if Karen, if you're fine with that, I just want to just give a couple of uh, of ideas that people can have as takeaways.
of
Uh,
course, and did you see this comment from Monique
okay, let me take a look.
Lewis?
You want to put it out there? We could show first. Oh, a- absolutely. Yes, Monique, that is definitely one of the ones that I have on the list. And please, as you have others that you want to share, financially. Right now, we do know that there are boycotts that are undergo being levied, against some of these big box retailers and others who and other companies that have stepped back very dramatically with respect to their DEI, policies and their support for their employees and consumers of color. So, okay, you have those dollars that can be moved somewhere else. There are I nonstop am receiving, either emails or playbooks listing black owned companies, people of color owned companies that need the support of those dollars. So, how much time does that take? It doesn't take very much time to say, okay, I usually buy my candles from X. Let me find a woman black owned or person of color owned, company that I can buy my candles from. It really doesn't take a lot of effort, and so that's like a perfect example. So, Monique, I'm glad that you mentioned that one. Making sure that you're looking at the way you're spending your dollars. The other area is there is, no doubt that the space of, inclusion they're trying to, like, retract it and make it as small as possible. And so the companies and the organizations, the not-for-profits that play in this space and that are focused on making sure that belonging is very important, and making sure that, they are putting together programs to support, uh, employees and people of color, they need your dollars more than ever. So if you have the ability to write those checks, please write those checks to those organizations. I mean, even law firms and excuse me, the pro bono organizations that are trying to protect our democracy, for goodness sake. They are seeing a very quick drying up of funding that would have been coming from the federal government. And so they're the big holes that need to be filled. So please, think about those organizations that you used to give to in the past and then are forgotten about, or the new ones that have been founded to create a space to make sure that we can hold on to our democracy and care about having a truly inclusive um, uh, United States of America. So those are two examples, and then the idea of like what you can do like within whatever meetings that you're in. As I said, whether it's PTA, whether it's your community session, or whether it's in a boardroom, or whether you're actually in your company, things that are said that seem biased or seem um, uncomfortable, and there's a silence, and it's directed towards the woman of color that's in the room. Don't let it pass. Like, say something. All right, like be a stand up. Um, a stand-up employee, or a meeting attendee, as opposed to just being a bystander. Be somebody who stands up. um, the other issue has to do with promotions, and providing leadership opportunities for women of color. That would have to be by actively sponsoring, and then speaking speaking positively about the contributions that that she made, that because oftentimes a lot of these conversations happen when we're not in the room, right? So what are some things that you can do to make sure that Janine gets the credit for this great project that she put together and nobody was really paying attention to it, or one of the guys are trying to take credit for what it is that Janine did. Speaking up, like using our voice, is really really important. And then the last thing I'll just raise is pay equity, because that's something that we as women generically have had as a real issue that we need to get addressed. And so, to the extent that you see that in your organizations, having to do with women of color, speak up, speak out, and then we should be doing that. Period, with respect to women in general.
Yes, and we're seeing some other comments in here, including reposting Black women voices. Make sure you're
Hmm.
elevating and
Hmm.
amplifying the voices of Black women. Invite collaboration with women of color. Create psychologically safe space to allow women of color to express their needs.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're seeing lots of great ideas. Stephanie Van Putten, who's like a dear friend, has a little Black book that lists lots of Black businesses. And if you are a subscriber, you can get it and recommend businesses who should be in the book. Um,
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, I think about too, Black women's leadership is under attack, whether it was President Claudine Gay
Mhm.
of Harvard, but and here in San Francisco, the director of our Commission on Women's Issues is under attack by the new mayor, by the media. It's just, this is a woman who has dedicated her entire life to advancing women's leadership, and she's being unfairly maligned. So showing up at
Yeah.
the Commission on Women's Issues and
Mhm.
testifying about how this has to stop is extremely important.
That very very well said, Karen. And don't underestimate the importance of your vote in your county elections, in your community election, the board the way decisions are made with respect to redistricting. The all these issues are so prevalent right now and so important. So don't sit that out. And not only do you need to go out there and vote, you need to make sure that you bring your girls to go along and vote, and your sons and your daughters and your community, because oftentimes, well, it doesn't really affect me. So, I'm fine where I am. We're really not all fine where we are.
Yes, and I would add to run for office your own self. We need to contest every race. We need to build infrastructure in every county in this country. So, so important. And I welcome if there's other suggestions that people have to pop in the chat. We welcome hearing from you as we start to come to the end of our hour. I'd love to share with you a little bit more about what Michelle and I have in store coming up
Mhm.
to capture some of the energy in our conversation. Michelle, do you want to share?
Well, I'll just start by saying that your group, the interracial sisterhood community, is something that I think that all of everyone on the bridge should actually get into. Are you putting a link in? Like, how would
Yes,
people?
you know what? Let
Okay,
me do that. I'm gonna
right.
put a link to join the
Okay,
interracial sisterhood.
because now's the time. I mean, and the coalition, the concept around the coalition is to figure out ways that we can work together to make the existence of women in this country more fulfilling, and supporting one another in every aspect of womanhood. And so the when you started this X number of years ago, yes, it was super important, but right now it's actually critical for us to have these real conversations. And I know the coalition, there's a monthly fee, which is extremely reasonable. But and I'll throw this out, La Maison Michelle will sponsor if you bring a girlfriend. If two of you come in at the same time, we will help with
Oh,
the
thank
yes, because
you.
I really believe that this is where we need to be in this country right now with regard to women. And I'm so pleased that you and I will be working together on a retreat. That this is probably going to be your fourth or fifth retreat, that's going to be happening at La Maison Michel, which is our resort in Barbados. I didn't mention this earlier, but after I left my corporate position as GC, I went full time into executive coaching. And one of the things that I do with my coaching is I host retreats at our resort in Barbados. So if any of you are interested in getting more information about that, you will be able to see that inside the Interracial Sisterhood Coalition, and you get other special perks that go along with being part of the coalition. And this is the time to grow it, Karen. This is the time to let as many people know about what it is that you're doing, and to get on board to really present together a future for our girls, and young women who are watching what's happening and are, I'm sure, feeling a lot of dismay. And I know I have these conversations with my daughter, who's 24, as I said, and she's over in London right now, but she's watching. And my nieces, there's it's very hard to feel positive about what's happening to women in this country right now. And so this is one way that I feel that I am actually making a difference, and doing what we can to bring us together and fortify the voices of women throughout this country.
Yes, I think everything you're saying is so on point, Michelle. And I hear from Portia who says, I find it can be overwhelming to stay positive these days, like Karen, and I'm a self-claimed proud Pollyanna. Yes, Pollyannas unite. I just came from a luncheon that I hosted in my small town of 70,000 people. Almost 50 people came together to look for bright spots in our community. A common theme from today was to start advocacy with ourself. My region is mostly white, so it's extra special to bring diverse communities together. 100%. 100%. I have felt it too, like, as the news and everything has weighed more heavily on me, this desire to just kind of retreat.
Mhm,
And what
mhm.
we really need to be doing is engaging and reaching out and coming together and not feeling isolated. That's exactly how they want us to feel, is isolated and demoralized and depressed. But when we come together and are around each other, so much positive energy flows from that.
Very, very well said, Karen. And one thing I want to just suggest to anyone listening in is, take the this is on YouTube, it's everywhere. Just forward it to your friends, forward it to your family, forward it to, anyone that you believe needs to have be part of this conversation, so that they can also have their small conversations, whether it's around the kitchen table, whether it's, around their community meetings, whether it's doing your book club. I mean, there's so many ways that we do get together, and this is the time to have conversations about how we can bring more joy into our lives, because it's going to be necessary, and it's necessary right now.
I loved your suggestion, Michelle, of if your employee resource group is under attack, or even if it's not,
Not mhm.
calling a few people from that and setting up a meeting outside of the workplace where you can relax, break bread, and really figure out how you can remain in solidarity with each other in what is going to be an increasingly hostile time is such a valuable uh, suggestion. And yes, we need consistency and long term relationship building. Agree, Portia. That is why we have the Mighty Network. We have an online container in order to build that long-term relationship. And what my ultimate goal is to train up people who can facilitate interracial sisterhood circles all throughout the country, right? And to be a support to the formation of those interracial sisterhood circles in every community in our country. That is how we're going to, nothing is going to change from on top. It's all going to change from
Mhm.
us getting more connected, collaborative, and organizing together.
Yeah, the one-offs are great, but the consistent engagement and the muscle memory of how it is to make sure that those connections stay is really what you're speaking of with the Interracial Sisterhood Coalition, Karen. And that is why foundationally that is like a model that can be replicated and within the community, and then people will come out with a sense of purpose, a sense of understanding of what to do, and then also a sense of support to be able to help them to go out into the world to make that difference. So that's really what it is that we would love to do.
Yes, and I love this comment from Monique. I work in publicity, and even I have seen this shift in the media lately. But staying positive and focusing on solutions rather than the issue helps so much. It's not that we cannot feel what we feel, but we can channel those negative emotions into positive results. I love
Absolutely.
that. To
Absolutely.
round out our conversation, Michelle, how are you
Perfect.
feeling?
I am feeling really much better than I had felt, going, probably about 2 hours ago. I will have to say. But anytime I have a conversation with you, Karen, I come out feeling much more positive, much more hopeful, and then my brain starts going with all different types of ideas of things that we'll be able to do together. So I'm super excited by this opportunity. I did want to say, does anyone have any particular questions for either one of us that you'd want to put in the chat, because we're going to be closing out in just 2 minutes. But if there's anything that's hot on your mind that you want to ask us, then we're happy to answer. Um, and if not, then Karen, how are people going to be able to reach you
Okay, you can direct message me and I'll be happy to send you the links to the retreat.
in November?
in November, as
Mhm.
well as the, Interracial Sisterhood Online Mighty Network. Um,
Which I firmly say that this is the move right now for you, is to join the coalition. It really will, it will change your life. It really will.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Michelle, thank
Yes.
you.
Thank
Yes, and what about for you? How can people stay in touch with you?
Please, on LinkedIn is the easiest way. Michelle C. Ifill. I'm the only Michelle C. Ifill. Easy to find. And lately I've been saying quite a few things on LinkedIn. I was quiet for a while, but I'm not quiet now. So please do connect with me. Forward my comments. Anything you see that you think that it's something that you want to make sure that I can forward out to my network, then please just send it on to me. I'm happy to forward it out. And I really just want to say thank you, Karen, so much for this opportunity and for this conversation.
Thank you, Michelle. I learn every time, and just as you said that I make you feel positive every time we have a conversation, I leave feeling so much better. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for your thoughtfulness, and for your role model.
Well, ladies and gents, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Karen, and have a great rest of the evening.
You too.
Bye
Bye.
bye.